Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
We can meet our destiny to build a land here that will be for all mankind a shining city on a hill.
You're listening to the Liberty Brothers Radio Show, only on Revolution Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Jim White and Jason Van Tatenhove.
The crusade for freedom is your chance and mine to fight communism.
Please hang up and try again.
Sheriff Peyman.
Yes, sir.
Hey, welcome again to the Liberty Brothers Radio Show. So, Sheriff, for those of our new listeners out there, you are the embattled Sheriff of Jackson County, and you kind of first broke out on the scene after Sandy Hook, when President Obama was talking about pushing through some presidential executive orders that weren't necessarily constitutional about assault rifles and trying to ban them. And you kind of you held a town hall then and kind of laid out to your constituency that you weren't going to let that happen in your county. And really, you've been one of those true figures who has stood for what you're supposed to stand for. You really said, you know what, I'm not going to let these ABC agencies come into my county and harass my citizens, which is what the county sheriff is supposed to be there to do. It's really, you're the peace officer. And we actually met going down to Bundy Ranch. Both of us were down there and met, and then I went out and helped you for a while out there in Jackson County. And I got to say, you just it's amazing the things you've done. You've actually arrested the judge executive and county treasurer there in Jackson County on corruption charges. And I know that's playing out now, so I don't know how much of that you can actually talk about now. But you also are really trying to vanguard a new effort to bring about research for medical marijuana. And this is not just pain relief and things like that. This is real medical grade stuff that is used to keep children who are having 200 or 300 seizures a day and stopping it with just a high CBC oil that has no effects as far as getting someone high or anything like that. It's really just a medicine. And I know there's some strains for opiate addiction to help ease the pain, the transition of opiate addiction and help people get their lives back. But it just sounds like you're doing so many amazing things, but yet you're getting fought on every level there. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening lately here in the county, there in Jackson County?
Yeah, we're still fighting the good fight, and that's it's not popular nowadays to fight the good fight. It is with what I call a sleeping giant, which should be the silent minority. But what we're finding is that the silent majority is they're searching for leadership, they're searching for direction, but they're not standing up for themselves. And it's still we the people. And that they need to realize that, and the only power that the federal government has is what we give them. And up till now, the people have given the federal government way too much power than what they're to have. And so we're trying to rope them back in, and that's very difficult when they've had the freedom and they use grants and money, free money. Nothing is free, especially when it comes to federal government, to control people. And so we're just at every front doing what we can do to do that, to keep the federal government at bay, to give the people the freedom that our forefathers and our Constitution was designed to do. But so many people are buying into that one vote doesn't make a difference, buying into, that's the federal government that they control, and that's wrong. They're not teaching the Constitution in school anymore. And so people really don't know what their rights are. And so that's what I've been doing a lot of. I've been traveling different parts of the country and talking to people about what to expect from their sheriff, what their sheriff's role actually is, because most sheriffs don't know what their role actually is, and trying to educate people. But we just have so much going on here in little Jackson County, Kentucky, that is actually setting precedents, and it will in the future set precedents, hopefully, for the rest of the country. So,
Sheriff, what do you? Hi, this is Jim, Sheriff. Good to hear from you, brother. I'm glad to talk to you again.
yes, it's always good.
It is indeed. What do you, Sheriff? It's almost like, and I know you experienced this during your election. It's almost like it's sort of a quasi mafia type mentality there, because you have families literally that have been rooted in to I know in Jackson County there for perhaps 2 or 3 generations. How do people initially, find their legs when they're faced with really deep-rooted systemic corruption? You've seen that firsthand. There's got to be a formula, and I'm sure it's been a successful formula in the past for rooting these people out. What do you suggest?
Well, what I'm finding is that people need to stand up, and people will not stand up until they've had enough. I realize that people get boldness when they've had enough, and people just haven't had enough. They've learned to live in the pecking order. They've learned to live by, well, that's just my last name, and our family, we're not one of the elite, so obviously we're not entitled to the things that these other families are. And trying to educate people and train people back into, you can do these things. We are the highest unemployment county in the state, in the country right now. And there's a reason for that. And following corruption, it's real easy to follow corruption. Very easy. And if you'll look, the top 10 counties in the nation for corruption, 7 of them are in Kentucky. And the other ones, if you'll look where most of the federal money goes, that's where most of your corruption goes. And they keep the people oppressed, depressed, and oppressed. And the result of that is being able to maneuver and control people. And when you've got big federal money, you've got unemployment, and you bring all these things to the table, it's pretty easy to control people, buy people, and control families, control votes. You can control jobs. You control everything. And it's a hard fight.
Well, Sheriff Rand Paul is the senator there for Kentucky, and from what we understand, Rand Paul is a straight shooting guy, and believes in the Constitution and the rule of law. Even in a situation where he's the senator, that corruption, you still have some of the top corrupt counties in the nation. Would you say now, out of the top 20, Kentucky has 8 or 10 of them? Is that what you were saying? What was that again?
Yes. Yeah, the top 7. We have 7 of them here. And it's all eastern Kentucky. And I'm not just flippantly throwing these things out. I have paperwork. I have things to back up everything that I say. And what we're doing is, what I have set out to do is, here in this county, I've set out to fight corruption on the county level. And what it's done is it goes from county to district, and I've already included 3 other counties in the corruption. And my plan is to get through this and to raise up other sheriffs, educate them as to how to go about this corruption, how to fight it, and how to become, break the wheel. Because I am actually the first sheriff to come into office here and serve a term, and will be I'm the only sheriff that will ever leave office that doesn't have more than what I started with. So that tells you quite a bit right there. And you see these elected officials that come into these, federal jobs that have nothing, and all of a sudden they're very wealthy people. And it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out, but it does take somebody with backbone to step up and challenge them on that and to hold them accountable. And that's the part that's not popular. People do not like to be held accountable. People do not like to have questions that will show guilt, and that's what we need to do. We need to put them in a position of answering to the people, not answering because they're elected officials, they can do what they want. That's not true. And they need to be held accountable, and the people can do that.
Sheriff, you talked about the county being the having the highest unemployment percentage in the country, and yet you have something. You have an idea that you've been working with different groups and individuals and whatnot that could really bring a whole new economic renaissance to Kentucky. The state of Kentucky recently passed medical marijuana research. Isn't that correct?
It's actually what it is. It's not medical marijuana. It's actually hemp.
Okay. Hemp.
Because the reason for the difference is the THC level is so low that it cannot be classified as marijuana.
Okay.
So it's actually, we have levels here that we're dealing with, and they're below what they would call marijuana. But if I put plants side by side and told you to pick which one's marijuana, which one's hemp, you probably won't be able to do that.
Well, this is something that your state had approved for research, and yet it seems like they've been fighting you every step of the way, and you've been really spearheading this initiative with different organizations and having some great success with something that could really change the whole game. I mean, think of what that could do to your whole county. I mean, how could it revolutionize your unemployment alone there in Jackson County?
Well, what has happened when this first started coming about, actually, Rand Paul was a big push for this, and he actually gave me some of his time to speak on the matter, because I was the only law enforcement in the state of Kentucky to stand up and speak on behalf of bringing hemp to the state and making it legal. In short, the talk that I had OPEC there. The thing is, the people have never been told the truth. That's the biggest thing. Federal government does not tell people the truth. The truth is, you have OPEC here that they're not going to tell people that hemp makes 6 times the fuel that corn does. They're not going to tell people that. What's the reason behind it? Obviously, what the reason is. Then you've got pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical, actually, if you'll check, the people on committees were receiving money from pharmaceutical for re-election bids. That's a no-brainer. But they're not wanting. They get this medicine to give children that's supposed to help these seizures, but it also damages their inner organs. So it's a life expectancy thing. These people deserve quality of life. And if a plant can do that, the problem is they cannot regulate it. And until they find out a way to regulate it, we're going to have to fight them on it. I'm saying turn it loose, have it become a commodity, sell it like you do corn, wheat, barley, whatever. Make it a commodity to everybody is equal and not just a few people. If everybody becomes equal on this, everybody has an opportunity. What it's done to our county so far, right now, testing our hemp, right now, it is the highest test in the world. Is it by a mistake that, people, investors from Canada, the day that I spoke in the Capitol, by the time I got to my office, I had investors standing in my office saying, we want to invest in Jackson County. The reason was he had a sheriff that was going to back him up. And when I spoke there, I didn't speak as a sheriff in all. I spoke as a small farmer. I spoke as a neighbor. I spoke as trying to what's going to help our county. Well, now we've got hemp growing. We've done our first harvest, and we're going to harvest right on through winter because we've moved it indoors, and we're going to keep producing. If people figure out they can make more money with hemp than they can with marijuana, how much marijuana are they going to grow? And then I looked at the state and federal people that I had to speak against. Well, they stood up and say, well, we're spending all this $13.3 million to eradicate marijuana. But you know what? If you plant hemp, it's real simple. You go talk to somebody who grows marijuana and you say, hey, I'm going to raise some hemp. And they're saying, I'm going to cut it down because if it cross-pollinates with my marijuana, it's not going to be worth anything. Well, then we start planting hemp. All of a sudden, there's not the problem with the marijuana growing unless they move it indoors. So these guys are flying, checking for the marijuana. It's going to knock them out of their bonus money for the summer on the eradication teams. Mm. Well, they're speaking up because they're against it. Federal government's up against it because they're going to lose that little bit of control here. We've already employed more people. I've employed more people as a sheriff than our fiscal court has gone outside, created business, and brought into our county. And it's just a start because now next year I can have farmers growing it. I mean, we've got family farms right now that are able to, where they were losing their business before, are actually building new homes, actually building onto their business. Their whole thing has changed because of cash flow that hemp has brought just to our county.
You mentioned, Sheriff, and I don't know if you said this when you just talked. I know we'll be coming up on the break here in just a moment, and we'd love to have you if you could carry over with us to the next hour if you're available. Didn't you say clothing? Is clothing, because I've heard that hemp clothing is much more efficient and better than other materials. Are you guys doing the clothing thing as well, that avenue?
Yeah. I've already had a woman from California in here looking for a place to build a factory, because if the hemp is here, it saves shipping it, because I know she's getting all hers from Canada and from China, and it's not the quality that she needs. But wearing hemp clothes is like, it actually feels better than cotton. It wears better than cotton, and it's there's so many things you can do with hemp. I mean, if we could spend the next hour just going down and saying what you could use hemp for. I mean, we're using it for car parts now. We're using it in dashboards. We're using it in clothes, furniture, anything like fibers like that. You know, hemp was the big thing here 70 years ago when they were making rope for the war.
Our country truly was built on hemp. When you look at, you know, the founding fathers and kind of that first generation, I mean, they used to mandate farmers had to grow hemp because it was so widely used.
Okay, who was it that helped put hemp out? Well, if you look back, there was gentlemen that came in here that owned paper factories, and they also had sawmills and stuff. So they needed to get hemp out of the way so they can make paper.
All right, well, Sheriff, we're coming up on the break. If you'll stick with us, we'll come right back.
All righty.
Anyway, we are back here with Sheriff Denny Peyman. He's the embattled sheriff there in Jackson County, Kentucky. And we were talking about hemp just before we left the show for the break. And we were talking about why hemp was made illegal by the barons and whatnot, that be the paper baron and whatnot. So if you could continue on with that, with what you're saying there, Sheriff.
And also that time was petroleum products were coming more into play. And so they were trying to switch rope from the hemp rope over to, and they came up with nylon. And so by coming up with nylon and by coming up with paper from trees, they went to do a bunch of lobbying to get hemp basically outlawed to where you couldn't raise it. It was against the law to raise it. And for the last 70 years, we've still been under the bondage of, rather than freedom for farmers to be able to raise a product, you know, a by far superior product, we've have fallen under the controls of big business. So.
You know, Sheriff, and we have been trying to avoid this Ebola thing for quite a couple days now because it's been in the news. But I'm going to ask you, because you are a constitutional sheriff, and I'm just curious to know how would you handle something? You know, and I'm sure it's a fine line, because we certainly don't want people that are infected. You know, everybody has civil rights, and a person has a right, I would suspect, and that's why I want to go over this with you, because it really is confusing. You know, you want to be able to protect people's civil liberties and not sequester them and quarantine them. But also, there's other people in your community that also have a right to live in a community that's free of people running around with infectious diseases. So, I mean, how do you make that balance as far as if you got the order to quarantine a certain part of your city, or something broke out there with Ebola there in your part of the town? How would you handle something that as a what would be the constitutional way to handle that?
Well, I know that is a very, very fine line, but it's also, there's the natural line. If you know that, you know, somebody is or does have, you know, spreading the disease, yes, we do need to quarantine. But, you know, it's just like people coming into our country used to go through Ellis Island, go through a process, and that way of being able to control people coming in through quarantining. But then you see our borders now that are wide open. You know, whose rights, by just letting them walk in here if they are, you know, infected with that? What was wrong with the process of going through Ellis Island? You know, but that was people coming in. Then you deal with a citizen that's already here, that was born and raised here, that there has to fall under a natural law also as to what is best for everybody. I'm really against, you know, the federal government being able to quarantine, and, well, just like with, you know, Panda and with what they're trying to do too, they're just detaining people. You know, the federal government can detain you for no reason now. There's such a fine line there as to why are you detaining a person, if it's for the good of everybody or if there's other motives or whatever. When it comes to something like somebody's infested, you send your wife and your children to go to the grocery store, thinking full well, yeah, they're safe. That's a good, safe place to go to the grocery store. But then you find out that, there's people that are running around that have that, and when your children come home and find out that, somebody sneezed in their face, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you have to protect. I mean, if someone was knowingly exhibiting Ebola symptoms,
Right.
I would think that there'd be some point where, and I'm
We
not saying
have
this
to.
as you would have a responsibility, not necessarily you, but authorities
Right.
would have a responsibility to pull this person aside. And I mean, I'm not talking like, treat them like a criminal, of course, treat them like someone
Yeah.
that actually is a patient, pull them
Right.
aside and sequester them. I got to believe that on the side of prudence, that would be the best way to go.
Yeah, but that's what I call natural law. And naturally, it's a thing of nature. Because a lot of that, well, is it really a thing of nature, or is it man created? Well, obviously, I believe it was man created, and I believe there was for a reason. But yeah, if you're sending your family into a place that's supposed to be a good, safe environment, you cannot allow somebody that has that to go in that same environment.
Well, I think part of the issue is we've got these doctors that are coming from areas where there is active infection going on with a very, very dangerous virus. It makes sense to me that they should be putting themselves into their own, mandatory quarantine time. That, if you're out
Right.
there, if your job is to be a medical professional helping these people, if you're doing it as a mission or whatever it might be, well, then you need to kind of step up for that last little home stretch run and self-quarantine to make sure, not only the general public, but your family is safe from this. And, so I don't know, there was a doctor that came in through, I want to say, LaGuardia Airport in New Jersey. And I think, LaGuardia is right in New Jersey. And, she's from Maine, but was quarantined there by Governor Christie. And, I don't know, it is a fine line, but when you have a population at stake, well, you need to be responsible for your actions, and you went out to a hot zone and possibly exposed yourself. So I don't know. I think people need to kind of think about that themselves as well, though.
Well, it's just like, when they came into Ellis Island, it's no different. When these people go out and do that missions work or that, Good Samaritan or whatever you want to call it work to combat this, when they come back in, there's nothing wrong with them to go back through a quarantine system to make sure they're clean before you drop them out back into public. That's why I mentioned, because everybody coming in before had to go through an Ellis Island thing. If they've purposely gone and maybe by mistake got exposed, but opened the opportunity by serving these people in their sickness, accidentally, but certainly by no reason, were exposed themselves, and they should be, enough that they would actually quarantine themselves and say, hey, when I'm coming back in, I'm going to allow so much time to make sure that I'm clean. If it was me, I would go for the quarantine because I don't want to expose my neighbors. I don't want to expose children. I don't want to expose people that I talk to and care about when I meet them in the grocery store. I know not all people think that way, but yeah, at some point, just for the good of everybody, they need to go through some type of quarantine to make sure they're clean before we dump them right back out into public. But the thing is, they're letting the people come across our borders. They're not checking any of them. They're purposely dumping people in here at that time to spread that.
Yeah.
So.
Sheriff, we see really, we live right now, and I think you would probably agree. I'm going to put words in your mouth, but you can respond. We sort of we see our federal government, in my view, really, it's basically a culture of lawlessness. There's really no one's in trouble for the crimes that they commit. There's backroom deals made. Large corporations that banks specifically that get busted laundering billions and billions of dollars worth of drug money get maybe a $2 or $3 billion fine after they've made $400 billion. What's it going to take really to end this culture of corruption, Sheriff? I mean, it's, you see it on a ground level from where you're at. We all see it nationally. Is it just really going to take people, like you said before, realizing that they've had enough, and until people are pressured enough or feel uncomfortable enough, nothing's going to happen? Is that what we're waiting for?
Yeah, they're going to keep going until it's just like, the only way we're really, to be honest with you, and this is nobody wants this, but yet maybe it's possibly what we need, but there's going to have to at some point we're going to, as a people, start throwing tea overboard. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to, the government's going to pass things, the government's going to say things, and we're going to say enough's enough. And, any government that gives their people that much, or their own selves that much power, and they back it up by buying all the ammunition, they know at some point the American people are going to buck. And there's a few little pockets that are, but they try to make an example of them. And it's just like, the Second Amendment gives us a God-given right to bear arms. And that's why they fight so hard to get that, because after they get that away, the other ones will fall just faster than ever, all the rest of it will fall. But at some point, people are going to have to raise up and say, you know what, if it takes a revolution to bring it back into focus, that's what we're going to have to do.
Well, you've certainly started to stand up and say you've had enough in your county, and we saw that with the arrest of the chief executive judge there and the treasurer. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there and how that's progressing? I know things are progressing along there, and what I know some of it's in court, so maybe you can't talk about it all, but please give us a little bit on that story and an update.
Well, what's happened here is there's been backroom deals, family deals. Hey, your family vote this way, we'll give you this. Basically, it's a minority of people that control, and it's so out of it is because of federal money. It's been the good old boy system for years and years and years here. What I did when I came in here, I wasn't a good old boy. I'm still not. I could have made easily another $25,000 a month. Easily, that's $1 million in a term. So when you have that much federal money coming in here, what's $1 million? It's nothing to pay a sheriff off. But, what it was I was the first sheriff to arrest a judge, a treasurer, also a magistrate with a citation. I tried to go the route of using a prosecutor to give me a citation, give me a warrant. And he's, not going to do that because it's rocking the boat. Then I go to a Commonwealth attorney, which to go through the grand jury system. He won't even let the people vote to see if they indict or not. That was a year ago. So I finally just got citations. We have an audit. I look at the audit, and I says, this is a violation, this is a violation, this is a violation, and I wrote charges up on those violations. I went and arrested them. And when I took them, we went into court, they're saying, well, they wanted to call it bad bookkeeping. They wanted to call it, they didn't fully understand. Well, they threw everything out. That was great. That's all I needed was for them to throw it out and then turn around and sue me. Well, now that they're suing me, everything has got to come above board. Everybody's going to have to take a stand, and they're going to have to say as to why they're running two separate sets of books, why they lied on numbers, and why they, lied. I can say it like it is. They lied about the numbers because the numbers do not go along with what their paperwork is because they had to look solid. And it says it right in the audit. They had to look solid to be able to borrow money. So you got a company that's already in the red and try to borrow money to get yourself in the black, it's not going to work. And so what they do is they come across with, we're $600 and some $1,000 upside down. Well, the truth of it is they're over $2 million upside down. And the way it is here in Kentucky, you cannot run in a deficit. So now we've got a government that's running in the deficit that has been able to hide money, being able to, when money comes in, put it into accounts that mean nothing, and then be able to pull out of that account later. All this is being exposed. It's all out on the table now. So we're all going to get to sit down and talk as to why was that put into this account, who said to put it in this account, and somebody's going to jail. You don't do those kind of crimes that somebody doesn't go to jail. And so that's where we are now. We're doing depositions, and when the depositions are done, we'll have all the things that we need. We will be able to sit down with the U.S. attorney. There are federal crimes, and I'm asking for indictments. So when I get the indictments, actually, there's only a few people out of this whole establishment here of elected officials that does not have charges to have on them. We're looking at probably 8 to 10 elected officials that will be, if everything goes right, that will be being arrested. So,
Sheriff, if you could, and I don't know how many people in our listening audience today would need much of a refresher, but for those few out there that probably do, if you could just for the benefit of the listeners here, just recap for us the real importance of a constitutional sheriff. I mean, people I don't think even still now realize the type of power, and I say that, when I say power, I don't mean for the sake of power. It's good power when it's in the hands of a true constitutional sheriff. But talk a little bit about just how much power, I can't think of another term, Sheriff, how much power the constitutional sheriff has.
The power to protect people.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I'll share a couple examples to help the people understand. But before I do that, I'll tell about our resolution first. We took 74 sheriffs, and we went to Nevada, and we met, and we sat down to talk of a resolution that we were going to submit to the government. And what that resolution is, you will not cross these lines because we will not tolerate. And that's basically what they got. And out of the 74 sheriffs that sat down and wrote this up in the wee hours of the morning, only 37 would sign it because it called for, if a federal official, a federal officer, a federal person comes into my county and tries to overreach their authority, they will be arrested. Now, what's that take? First of all, it takes the knowledge of the Constitution, knowing what your rights are as a sheriff. Give you an example. IRS, they send you a letter. You ever notice that the letter is always $6,000 to $10,000, depending on, you owe us $6,000. Why do they say $6,000? Because they know that you will pay that rather than go get an attorney and fight that. Okay, they don't have to say what you owe it for. They can just say you owe us we've gone through our records, and you owe us $6,000. The difference in a constitutional sheriff and a regular sheriff, the regular sheriff, they'll come into the county, they'll send them their letters, and they'll say we're coming to seize whatever it is we have to take to get our $6,000. The difference in this county, when they come in, if they do not come to my office first and show their reason for being here, if they do not have a piece of paper that's been signed by a judge, going through due process, signed by a judge for them to be here, they will be asked to leave. If I find out that they are going after those people, and, I've had them come in here now saying they're going to seize bank accounts. The IRS cannot seize a bank account without a judge's signature.
Well, they're a private corporation. They're a private corporation. That's like Kmart coming in and saying, I want to seize a bank account. Right. Or Baskin Robbins. It really is a private corporation. They don't have the power to do that.
No, they don't. See, but we, the people, have let them think they have that power when they don't. I've had IRS people come into my office and say, well, I'm going over to the bank, we're going to do this, this, and this. And I said, let me see your paperwork. They show me their paperwork, and I said, no, you're not. And I said, if you ever contact these people again without the signature of a judge, I said, I'll arrest you. They went over to the bank. They went over and talked to the judges and stuff, and they came back here, and they said, well, what can I do about this amount of money here? And I says, you know what? It's not my problem. You do due process. You go through the system as to proving why that money should be taken from these people. And you know what? They haven't been back. Another example, eradicating, the marijuana. They're flying. They fly, and it costs probably $3,000 an hour to fly. And so, while we're raising hemp, they're flying out there. They flew my house. I had 9 hemp plants. They flew my place for over an hour. I never said a word. They flew where our farm is that we're raising the hemp. They flew it. They've been invited there. They've been told that they can make an appointment and come at any time and walk through it. They can do anything they want to do, but they choose to fly it. And they flew it for over an hour one day. And so finally I left my office. I drove out there. I drove on scene. I watched them fly this area. I saw the state police parked on the side of the road waiting for saying, hey, we spotted something, come on in. I called, and I just talked very plainly to the people that were in control. And I says, here's how it works, boys. I said, it's called probable cause. You've been up there for an hour. You can find 3 marijuana plants in the national forest you're not going to find anything other than what you've already found in the last hour. We're at a point of trying to decide now if it's harassment that you're wanting to do, or what are you doing? I said, now you're talking to a taxpayer. You've cost a taxpayer over $3,000 to fly this place, where obviously if there was something, you would have been in here already. I said, probable cause is, to where you get a site, and that's fine. I said, but here's how it works. If you land that aircraft and you do not have probable cause, I will impound that aircraft. I've already called rollbacks to come and get your vehicles that are parked out here on the road. If you're going to come in here, if you come in here with a signed statement from a judge that, yeah, we've seen this or have this for evidence, I say, come on, I'll go right along and help you. But you're not going to abuse your power to harass or to do this to this farmer. And you know how long they were in the air after that? They weren't. They left. You know how many times they've been back? They haven't been back. That's where a sheriff, his responsibility is to protect the rights of his people. That's called life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is being a homeowner, owning your own place. Your rights, that have been given to us by our forefathers and by God, God-given rights. And happiness is when you get the two together.
Sheriff, I have to say I'm longing for a sheriff like you, man, around here, because, man, we would just have, and I don't mean to sound self-serving to you when I say this, but, man, this country would be in a much better position if we had a whole entire fleet full of constitutional sheriffs that had that same mindset you just exhibited. I mean, that's we got to work towards that, Sheriff. We really do. I mean, I know you are. I know you're working hard towards it, but we're going to step up the fight. Anything we can do to help.
That's what I speak different places, and I asked, is there any sheriffs in the audience? If there any law enforcement in the audience. See, the difference between law enforcement and a sheriff, the sheriff is the last line of defense for the people. There is nobody else. If they take the sheriff out, there is nobody that can help your people. Nobody. And they know that. That's why they've been trying to, Connecticut, they voted off the sheriffs. There is no sheriffs. Delaware, they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to just ease the sheriffs out, any type of elected official, constables. They're trying to get rid of these people because that's the voice of the people. My job is, looking at my oath, the oath that I took, it's to protect the Constitution and using the Constitution to protect my people. But what it is that oath means nothing to so many sheriffs. They flippantly say it, but they do not understand what oath they took. But our job is to protect the people against a government. They knew very well the job of the sheriff when they wrote the Constitution. Those were not ignorant men. Those were God-driven men that were, given, I forget the word, got inspired when they wrote the Constitution. And that's because they knew the future, and our future is here now.
Yeah, they really do.
And whenever the sheriffs don't stand up, that means the IRS can come in and do what they want. The EPA, what's the EPA? They're telling us we can't do this and can't do that. They come in and put stipulations on stuff.
They're not even elected. They're not even elected, Sheriff.
They're what?
They're not even elected. The EPA's not even elected. They're not even.
Yeah.
No, they're not elected. They don't represent us.
No, they don't. And they represent big government. They represent control. They represent control.
Well, what do you think, Sheriff, going forward? I mean, what do you think? What's the prognosis for this sick patient we call our republic here? We'd like to talk about solutions here on the Liberty Brothers because there's certainly plenty of problems to talk about. But what do you think the solution would be? Is it just, we've talked about this before with our other guests. Would you think a good start for people to get involved would be just start going maybe to your town hall meetings, Sheriff, and just kind of hearing what's going on and listening to the city council at least? I mean, how do people start getting involved? Is that a good first step?
The thing to start with is to finding out what's going on, because most people turn a deaf ear to. They only want to hear things that tickle their ears. They only want to say things that or hear things that make them feel good about themselves. They don't want to hear the bad stuff, so they ignore it. It doesn't go away. just like I spoke at a place in Indiana a couple weeks ago. Actually, it was a 3-state deal, and they were talking about how we're going to straighten this all out. And I had a 3-hour. It was really kind of cool. I spoke for 3 hours. Not one person even went. I got up and used the bathroom because people are so hungry to know the truth, to know what their rights are, and to know what to do about it. You see, everybody, I told the people when I first came in here, I said, when I leave here today, I said, everybody's going to have an assignment. And I guarantee you what, for you people that want to know what God's will is in your life and what you're supposed to be doing, I said, when I leave here tonight, I will be able to tell you that. And so I had everybody's attention, But it's real simple. If the American people would go back to, the deal of love thy neighbor, here's in a nutshell. If you want to know what God's will is for your life, to what you're supposed to be involved in, to whatever fight that you're supposed to be fighting, to whatever need you're supposed to be filling, if you see, this is real simple now, it's not a brainer. If you see a need and you can address that need, that's your call. It's not tomorrow. It's not the next day. It's meeting the call today. People have to think about that. Well, what do you mean? Just like posses. Okay, you have a posse. A sheriff that cares enough about his community to do his job. You've got a posse. Okay, let's say you've got a mechanic on your posse. He goes, man, I don't know what to do. He says, I really want to reach out in the community. I want to do these things to help. And I say, I'll tell you what. I've got 2 single moms raising their kids, working their hind ends off to make their bills. Would you do something for me? I says, the sheriff's posse program will put up the money. Will you just go over and change your oil, check the air pressure in their tires, and make it safer for them to go to and from work? Now, what's that take? But that is a need of reaching somebody that's struggling and helping them. You're not giving them money. You're not like a government that just throws money at everything. Now you've got somebody involved in somebody's life that's trying to help them. You've got a beautician that wants to cut somebody's hair. Hey, you ever cut the homeless guy's hair so he can go maybe look for a job and look decent? Maybe he will get a job. You open up your courtyard someday and have free haircuts in these big cities and watch what happens. Just before school starts, wash their head, make sure they don't have lice. Now, is this stuff that a sheriff talks about? Yes, it is. It's stuff meeting the needs of your people, no matter what those needs are. And if you start on that level and start going forward and get involved in your community when there is a problem, those are the people that's going to have an answer.
Sheriff, I think it was Sheriff Mack that we had on the air here. I want to say a month or so ago, and I know you know Sheriff Mack real well, and I believe it was him that we were talking, and he had said one of the problems is that the police really are no longer sort of police officers; they've become law enforcement. And he goes, back in the day, a cop would spend way more time outside their car, walking amongst the regular folk than they do now. Do you think there's a bit of a responsibility, Sheriff, you coming from a law enforcement background and being a law enforcement officer currently? Do you think there's responsibility of people to step up, no doubt, but do you see that there's some responsibility of law enforcement also to sort of maybe not be so heavy-handed on some of these things that they're doing and some of these arrests and the militarization? I mean, there's enough responsibility to go around in this matter, do you think?
Yes. Well, as I was speaking at this last, I've got to send you a picture of this. I had a guy show up there who was 6'9", weighs about 400 pounds. This guy is huge. And so I'm a small frame guy, not small frame, but I'm short. And I stood and had my picture taken in front of him. I had my arms crossed. He stood behind me with his arms crossed. And I said, don't make me call for backup. Because the law enforcement that I do, Jason's been with me when I've made arrests and stuff. The attitude that I have, I work on a level of 1 to 5. And I'll explain this to you real quick, and then I'll tell you how this boy named Greg, who is an officer, that guy is an officer in Indianapolis. And And that's a rough city. That's a rough city. But he's a cop up there. Well, I went through and explained how I arrest people. And, I work on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is like we're talking right now. I come to the door. I knock on the door. I says, hey, so-and-so here. Hey, I hate this, but, I do have paper on you. But I says, here's how I work. We're going to talk. Your kids are never going to know that I'm not your best friend. We're going to do all these things. I will not disrespect you in front of your children. I will not disrespect you in front of your wife. I will not handcuff you. I says, but, I work on a scale of 1 to 5. We're at 1 now. 2 is when you get loud. I'm going to get louder. Then they're going to realize we're not buddies anymore. 3 is when it's hands-on. 4 is when I choose whatever weapon, tool, anything it's going to take for me to finish the job that I came here to do. 5, I'm going to call the coroner. Okay? I'm talking to these people like this. We go in the house. I'll sit and watch TV with the kids while the guy takes a shower. If he wants to eat, I don't kick doors. I will not violate a person's rights simply because I believe there's somebody in there I have a warrant for. I will wait till another day. When I arrest these people, we walk out. They sit in the front seat with me. I'll let them have a cigarette on the way to the jail. When we get there, we take care of our stuff. If I give people choices, so one guy speaks up in the crowd. I say I give people choices. All the choices are there. Well, I've made the choice to come there. Now you're going to make the choice how we're leaving here, and we are leaving together. And
Sheriff, aren't there even some people? Sorry to interrupt you. Aren't there even some people that actually hold out and wait to be arrested by you because you treat them so fairly, and they're worried about getting a beat down from the city cops? Is that fair?
Well, yeah, even the FBI comes in here and tries to find people. No, I'll let them work for days looking for them. And then because they've made the comment that, hey, that sheriff there, he's just a social worker. Well, so be it. If that's what I have to be to take care of my people, that's what I'll be. But then they'll finally say, we can't get him. I said, I'll bring him to your office at 9 o'clock tonight. And I make the call, and I say, hey, what are you doing? FBI's looking for you. Yeah, I know. You've been hiding out. I say, hey, I'll tell you what, meet me down here at this spot. He says, is that cool for you? And they said, yeah, that'll work. They meet me down there. I put them in the front seat of my car. We may stop and have supper on the way to the FBI. And sometimes we do. And then when I pull down there, the FBI jumps out. They pop my back doors, and there's nobody there. The guy gets out the front, and they just like, hey, this ain't going to happen. I said, no, wait a minute. For 1 minute, listen to me. I says, you could not complete your job. You had to get a social worker sheriff to do that for you. And they don't like that, but it's all in respect to the people. Jason saw it. I call people on the phone and say, hey, I got a warrant for you, but I had to schedule them to get them, because I was doing something or they was doing something. I say, hey, wait, and let's do it after the weekend. Have the weekend with your kids. Be here Monday morning at 8 o'clock. Out of 6 people we arrested that one couple of days, we only went to the house for one. That's because he was passed out on the couch. His mother let us in. And even that wasn't a problem. Jason got to see when I arrested this one kid. They said, yeah, when Denny comes after you, it's like family coming to get you, so you don't mind it.
Yeah, it's such a sight to see, folks. I mean, I was there. I was present on several different arrests. And the way Sheriff Peyman handles the office of sheriff could revolutionize all the problems we're seeing with these militarized police that we're seeing these days, or it's just always jumping to that 5 level where they're ready to just kill you before they talk to you. And it's a very serious issue that we're facing more and more. We're seeing this happen, and this is the answer right here. Unfortunately, it's going to take a change in how we educate our new police officers. Sheriff, it does look like we have a question coming in from the chat room.
Okay, can I just say one more thing real quick before we let it go?
Sure.
That big officer, one guy from not a heckler, but he came out and says, yeah, he says, but you come from a small town, and he says, you make it sound like Andy of Mayberry. I said, that's true. This guy named Greg stood up and said, excuse me, sir. He said, I can answer the questions. Everything Sheriff Peyman has told you is true. He says, if we would handle it in Indianapolis like that, we would get the same result. So, and this guy is a monster. He could kick doors and decide who he's going to take with him. But he spoke as a kind man that showed respect to the people, and he knows that can work in other cities just like it does here. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we got a question coming in from the chat room. Does the sheriff feel there's a difference between today's law enforcement, quote-unquote law enforcement, and yesterday's peace officer? And how do we handle that when confronted?
Okay, that was the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Say it one more time. I was waiting for the individual to come on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, it's just out of the chat room. So it's, does the sheriff feel there's a difference between today's, quote, law enforcement and yesterday's, quote, peace officer? And then how do we handle that when confronted? And I'm assuming as a citizen when confronted by law enforcement.
Okay, well, confronted by law enforcement is, first of all, be respectful of law enforcement also. But that is an earned respect. Like most respects, it's earned, and officers need to. You find in any office, be it a sheriff's department or a police officer, state, people can know right quick how you approach people, how you speak to them, and how. I've watched some of these guys come up and how they talk to people. Man, I wouldn't go with them either without a fight. They come up, they belittle them, they talk down to them instead of treating them. I mean, everybody I talk to is sir. I don't care who they are. We arrested a guy last night on a burglary. I walked up, they already had him in custody. I came to talk to him before we took him away. I said, sir, I understand that you're caught, and this is what you're looking at, and how can I help you? What's a cop ask? How can I help you for? It's because he's obviously out to do something wrong, but he's an individual too. And what's your reason for doing it? That the court systems decide the outcome of that. But it's usually me just ask these questions. But if a person's going to be arrested, by a cop, and there's cops out there that have had a bad day, and that have got stuff going on at home. That are struggling too, and then they get to where they just came off of a bad situation. Now they've come over to arrest you, and they come with a chip on their shoulder. That's where training has to be implemented to help teach these guys. They go to academy, they show you all these films that these are cops that got shot. They don't show you the part where you go to a domestic and you don't get shot, but yet you talk to somebody and you heal up a family before you leave, and that all of a sudden they're not anybody going to jail. But most guys make up their mind when they get out of the car, somebody's going to jail. I hear that comment so many times. They called me out tonight. Somebody's going to jail.
Sheriff, if you could address a moment, I don't know how prevalent it is there in your county. But I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding the privatized prison systems. It almost seems that there's some sort of an incentive for the prison systems to arrest bad guys, or for the police. There's sort of a quota system. From what I understand, is when a prison comes into a prison corporation comes in and wants to put a prison there, it's under the agreement that it has to have a certain amount of capacity filled for it to be profitable. Yes. Now that right there leads itself to, you've got to fill the jail cells, so we have to go out and make some criminals. Isn't that whole privatized prison system in itself, just by design, open for corruption and just destined to fail?
Yes, it is, because it's just like part of our court system too. We've got to have so much go through here, so much business go through here monthly to be able to pay all our bills. So how do they do that? Well, they send the police officers out to make more arrests. Instead of writing one citation or two citations for like a car, something wrong with the car, they write 7. Why is that? It's because they'll say, okay, well, we'll eliminate these if you plead guilty to these. What's the American guy going to do? He's going to plead guilty to it. That just causes the wheel to turn. That means he'll pay $20 a month for a year or 2 years or whatever it takes, $20 a month. If he misses a payment, they'll put out a warrant for him. He'll be a bench warrant. He'll be arrested, come back in. Now you're paying on that one plus this one, and it just excels from there, But that's one thing, because that's guaranteed. Well, just like the big thing in the prison systems now is straw men or paper inmates. An inmate for the last name of Hernandez, that is serving 10 years. You might go check that guy out. He may not even exist, but yet the government's paying that private prison so much money a month for 10 years for a guy that doesn't even exist. All they have to do is say, well, Hernandez went to the infirmary and got this medicine and blah blah blah, and he's due to be released. when they come up with those numbers in the prison and stuff, how many of those people are really real? I mean, that's a whole new thing. That's number games that are unreal, and it's been going on for years. It's nothing new, but it's just part of it.
Now, Sheriff, we hear the terms thrown around, and it kind of goes back to the original question that I asked, but I actually was going to ask this question separately. What is the difference between a police officer and a peace officer? Because you hear those two different words, and I believe there's a distinct meaning between them. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay, a peace officer. Let's say that you're going to a domestic. I don't recommend everybody doing what I do. I really don't. This is just the way I've been doing things and the way they work for me. Okay, let's say you've got a police officer. He shows up at the door, you've got a domestic, you got a husband and wife getting into it. She makes her statement and says, well, he did this, this, and this. He just arrests the guy and packs him off. Okay? Now, you've got a separated family. You've got things, if you go up there and there's blood and everything, that's one thing. But if you have where people are just fussing at each other and saying, he said he was going to kill me and, terroristic threatening, but she's got to sign the complaint, they'll pack him off. I've walked into these situations where you've got mom over here running her mouth and dad over here running his mouth. And what I do sometimes, I'll walk in, I say, how do you guys want to do this? I've got rules. We can go through one of mine and see how it's going to work for you. And she wants to say, I said, no, don't say anything. You don't say anything. I'm going to do the talking. I'll set a chair on my right. I'll set a chair on my left. I'll put her in one chair and him in another chair. I said, here's how it works. When she's talking, you hush. When he's talking, you hush. When I'm talking, you both hush. First person out of their chair goes to jail. Now, I said, let's start. This is a Friday night. I said, okay, what we're fighting about, probably something that took place 3 days ago. It's just built to this point. And, hey, they're all the same. It stems from a different problem. It's just that I got there in time for how it's played out. Now, I look at him, and he's been talking bad to his wife. And I go, wait, let me ask you something, brother. I said, you're talking to her this way. I said, if another man was to talk to your wife that way, I said, this is the woman that you said you loved, that you did all these things for, and that, this is, but I said, then I look at her and I said, and this is your husband where you're supposed to be doing these things for him instead of what we call zingers. And when they walk through the door, we know what makes them mad. So we, sail a zinger at him. I'm going to piss him off when he first walked in the door. And so and we sit there and talk. And I let the children be part of the answer. But, more times than one, a peace officer will handle it like this. When they get up, that family is still intact. I didn't haul somebody out. But you know what? It takes time, and it takes, most people don't want to spend the time to resolve the problem.
Well, Sheriff, we got a comment coming in from the chat room saying, why have you not run for president? The U.S. leadership needs you at the helm. So apparently we're getting more and more converts to your way of policing. And I truly believe if we were able to figure out how to re-educate, these new officers coming out of their academies with how you do things, we would see a dynamic change in our policing across the country.
Whenever a police officer, you have two ways of proving yourself to people. Power, when you pull these kids over that are drag racing and stuff, you slam them with a big ticket and you send them off, or you arrest them, whatever. I've had kids that were racing up and down the street, 16 years old, just their first time driving. They're burning the tires off of mom's car because they don't have one. And I pull them over, and I stop them, get them out of the car. I take them. They walk to every house on that street. They knock on the door. They say who their mom and dad is. They say what they've done, who they are, and they apologize. And they say, I will never do it again. They walk down the street one side, come back down the other side, they're back to their car. Now, if I wrote them a ticket, obviously insurance is going to go up. That's going to penalize dad. That's going to, it just goes right on, as to the outcome, how that goes. What did that young person learn? I've had more people come to me after the fact, come back to me. You know what? And I talk to them. They're actually embarrassed and ashamed if I catch them again. They hang their heads, because they've realized that I have given them a chance, And so I just do things like it takes time. But you've got to care about your people and what the outcome of that young person's life is. Now I've had one parent come to me and says, "You have humiliated my child. You've made him do this." And I listened to him till he was done. I said, "Hang on one second." I said, "You're right, exactly right." I wrote out the citation, give it to him. I said, "Okay, now you've got a $300 ticket. Your insurance is going to go up because that's what should have happened the first time." I said, "I was trying to help your child." The guy had to pay it, and the child came back to me years later. He's in the Army, came back to me years later, and he says, "You know something?" He said, "That was the best thing that ever happened to me." Because people need to be held accountable for what they do, but not at the expense of just, being treated badly and just, hung out there. It takes only but a little bit of time to change the outcome of things a lot.
Sheriff, I sat in your office for a few weeks and helping you out and going out on calls, and I was so impressed with the number of people. You talked about this gentleman coming back and thanking you. I've got video and pictures of people coming into the office, breaking down in tears, thanking you for the influence that you've had in their lives. Thanking you for arresting them. But again, you don't just arrest someone. You ask them, "How can I help you?" And then you follow through with the ones that do reach out and tell you how you can help them. And it seems you've changed just so many lives there, and that's just got to be, just a blessing on you. I mean, it really, it just, to see that emotional outpouring coming from your constituency, walking in, not just once or twice, but it happened several times while I was there.
Well, it's, when I get up in the morning, I decide what kind of day I'm going to have. I decide. I don't let a government decide. I don't let people decide. People will want to, they want to keep you down. They want you to have bad days and stuff. I decide when I get up that I want to influence somebody's life. I want to change somebody's life for the better. And I go out, and it's funny, if you go look, you don't have to look far. I had a guy one time say, "I really want to be involved in ministry. I want to do this, 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 and this." I said, "Wait, come with me." I said, "You give me 20 minutes, and I said, I'll get you into more ministry than you can ever get out of in a lifetime." We went and stood at the front door of a store. And I waited, and people were walking out, "Hi, how are you?" And it was in a few minutes, here comes a person up that had a problem. And, they said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" So we're talking. I called the guy over. I said, "Hey, here's a need. You can address this need." And what happens, he became involved in a family, and which involved to another family. And at that point, you're changing lives. You're changing lives, but all it takes is our time. But nobody wants to give time anymore. Nobody wants to have that. You don't see people sitting on the porch. I mean, if I see somebody eating by themselves, I just go up and ask you, "Do you mind if I join you?" They think you're weird until you sit and talk to them. And, or what's wrong with seeing somebody go through the line that that is struggling? I've watched people counting their money. Do I put in $3 worth of gas or buy a gallon of milk? Or do I put $1.50 worth of gas and buy a half a gallon of milk?
I've had decisions like that myself.
Yeah, and while they're trying to decide, what's wrong with just reaching over and giving them $10 or $15, $20 worth of gas? Go ahead and buy a gallon of milk. And it's just reaching out to people where they're at. I have sat and talked with addicts that are, they're trying to come, they're pill sick. They're in my office puking. They're in here saying, "Man, I'm taking 7, 8 Percocets a day, and, I'm having trouble coming off." I don't arrest them. They're in here confessing to me because they want help. And that's what we do is I get on, I find a voucher for them, and I send them to a rehab.
Well, Sheriff, we're coming towards the end of the show here. Sheriff, if you could please give us an idea of where people out there that I know there's a lot of people in the chat room that are interested in knowing more about you because they appreciate the things you're saying, because I really think that generally speaking, the liberty message and the freedom message, resonates well with Americans who love freedom and liberty. So if you could let us know how people can get in touch with you, Sheriff. I know you have a Facebook page. I'm not sure if you have a website going on, but let us know a little bit about you and how we can find out more about your work and what you got going on.
Well, I tried the Facebook thing. I mean, I'm still on there, but I just don't have the time. It's so hard. But they want to listen to some more stuff. I got some new stuff that's going to come out this week that I'm doing with Channel 18 News out of Lexington on hemp. and it's about these kids. That's going to be out this week. But we've been getting that stuff on YouTube, and I think if they just go under Sheriff Denny Peyman on YouTube, they'll have all kinds of things. I mean, my Alex Jones show, my talk when I was on the news, Fox News with Greta, that kind of stuff. Just kind of give an idea, and people are always welcome to call the sheriff's office here. If I don't answer, Carla will, and we will be glad to talk to people. I'm probably one of the only sheriffs in the country where you walk in the front door, I'm the first person you see. You don't have to go through a bunch of folding doors and glasses and people to get to me. If people want to talk to me, everybody here has my cell phone number. People here can contact me, and they do regularly. But that's being
usually through the night, it seems. Kind of It seems like people are contacting you nonstop. So
it's pretty wild some days.
Well, for what it's worth, there's been accolades out of the chat room asking to run for president. You seem like your message is very popular. So, boy, we'll have to have you on again soon and update everything. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on. We just appreciate how you're living your life and what you're doing for the cause of liberty, because you really are one of our national heroes. So thank you so much for what you're doing, Sheriff, and thank you for joining us once again here.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to our next chat.
All right.
See you, Sheriff. Take care, brother.
Thank you. Love you guys.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Well, and again, that's Sheriff Denny Peyman, good friend of mine. I consider him a good personal friend. Spent a lot of time with him. Went and got to know his family, and broke bread, and just an amazing individual. And I can tell you, he's just very straight shooting, and there isn't a false pretense in the guy at all. It's just amazing.
No, he's the kind of guy that good stuff's made of. You know what I mean? Or he's made of good stuff, I guess, because he is. Man, I tell you, what you see is what you get with him. When you're with him personally and talking to him, he's just the same guy that he is right now on the air. I mean, it's how he is. It's every time I've met him, he's just been that way. He's the real deal, and I'm very happy to call him my friend as well.
Yeah, maybe Jerry, our first guest, the film producer, someday will look at doing a movie on his story. You never know.
Well, that'd be a nice connection to make, huh?
Yeah.
Because
there's definitely a story there there's definitely a story to tell.
There is indeed, and I tell you one thing, Jason. This is a call out to anybody out there that's listening that is a sheriff, and I don't think we'll probably have very many. However, if there is, follow along the side of the Constitution and really be a constitutional sheriff. If you're wondering how it's done, go to CSPOA.com. That's the Constitutional Sheriff and Police Officers Association. And I'm sure Denny probably wanted to plug that because I think he's a member. Go to the CSPOA. I'm correct, Jason, right? Is that what it is, CSPOA? Go to the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers
Association, which is, of course, Sheriff Richard Mack's organization that he put together. And it includes...
.org. It's probably .org. I don't remember what it is. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, if you just type that in, go ahead, Jason. You're right. It's good organization.
Yeah, and all of these guys should be our national heroes, from Sheriff Christopher in Delaware to all of them. They're just great stuff. And really, I would put out that call out to any law enforcement, if anyone who's sworn an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. Really, folks, you need to understand what an oath is. An oath is something between you and God that you die with. You don't walk away from it. And it is of the highest order. And I think too much our politicians and those that we give the power to protect us, which so often these days is abused, really need to consider the oath that they take. We really, really need to please think about that and understand that oath that you're taking, that's a sacred thing you're doing right there. So anyway, that's the today's show. Who do we have coming up, Jim? I know we got just a couple minutes here.
I don't know if we have, Jason, I'm not sure if we have anybody come up for the rest of the week. I know there's some people that I've been contacting. I'm waiting to get back to me. As a matter of fact, I take that back. I have to check my schedule. We do have some people coming up this week. I don't remember who at the top of my head. But doing some web stuff, and I've just been working on these websites, and I haven't. I can't remember.
Excuses, man. Between that and George Lucas, really? Oh man.
No, I know. I should have got the Lucas thing. I don't know if I can live that one down.
You're never gonna live that down, man. You're never gonna live that down.
I know. And we just got done talking to a big time Hollywood producer, and I can't remember
George
the
Lucas's name.
Yeah, I'm sure I gotta believe he's got to be one of the top producers in the whole entire Hollywood. Is George Lucas? Bigger than Jerry Mullen, I would think. I mean, Star Wars is giant. Star Wars is huge.
Big as they come.
Yeah. Didn't he sell that for like some billions? Like, wasn't it like many, many billions of dollars he sold the rights for?
I honestly don't know the number.
That was like 60 billion. I thought it was like 60 billion.
Yeah, I know that Disney has deep pockets. So, again, we'll see where that goes, man. I'm still not sold on the Disney thing. So, all right. Well, that's our show for today. We'll be back again. We're not here tomorrow. As always, Tuesday we have off. We'll be back on Wednesday. Join us then. In the meantime, visit us on thelibertybrothers.com.
Bye now.